Hello, everyone. Welcome again to my channel. Today, we're going to talk about the operational strategy in football soccer. This is a topic that is extremely important, especially for the coaches who are working in performance football. In my opinion, of course, we always talk about my opinion, which is I always repeat it over and over. It's not the truth, although it's just my opinion, it's just my point of views of experience of working many years as a coach in Spain and Uruguay and also in China. In modern football soccer, as we have mentioned on several occasions, we not only have our playing model that we are going to build up throughout the whole season and where it will be under permanent construction, but we must also choose a way or develop a strategy in order to compete. Of course, that our model is going to have it's going to have different objectives, whether we are working in performance or youth football soccer. So, depending on what level you're coaching, the playing model, we all of the coaches have playing models, even though you're not conscious that you do. Okay, all of the coaches always have playing models. Okay, and depending if it's a playing model where you are developing or you're working with youth or children or youth or teens, okay, you're going to focus more on educational, okay, purposes. Okay, you're going to try to make the footballer, the player, the athlete, okay, try to educate them, try to teach them the game, all the fundamentals and concepts, okay, while having fun, okay. And performance is going to be on a second level, okay. Now, as soon as these teens start getting to puberty, this is when you're going to start focusing more on performance, okay. And the ones that are working from those ages up, you're going to be focused more on performance, and the playing model is not only going to be focused on learning the game and the fundamentals and the concepts, but also on winning on every weekend. But because of course, we all know that if you're in a club and you lose a lot of all the matches or many matches, you're probably going to get fired, okay? And you're probably going to receive a lot of criticism, either from the players or the families, okay? Depending on the opponent, we are going to elaborate a strategy and a plan taking into consideration our playing model. The functional organization, the characteristics that our players have and how they interact according to the system, and structural organization, which is, in other words, the system, okay, the numbers, okay, 1-4-3-3, 1-3-5-2, 1-4-4-2, 1-4-1-4-1, or 1-4-2-3-1, whatever system you use, okay. In the functional organization, what we mean is that you may play, for example, the example to explain it I always give is that if a team plays 1-4-3-3, but the characteristics of the three players in the middle are offensive midfielders, the 1-4-3-3 is going to be very different to a 1-4-3-3 where you have three defensive midfielders and the two wings are defensive midfielders as well. So there you have the same system, the same numbers, but the functional organization is different because of the characteristics of the players, okay? So depending on the opponent, we're going to elaborate a strategy and a planning, taking into consideration our playing model, the functional organization, okay, and the structural organizational system that our opponent for that match, and what our system that we will have, and what our opponent for that match, and what characteristics it will have. So we're going to take into consideration all the information regarding our playing model, and of course the playing model of the opponent, of the team that we're going to face, okay? What do we mean by operational strategy? Operational strategy is the approach that a team uses to counter and neutralize the opponent. They are those unusual behaviors of our game model that are implemented in a specific match to reduce control of the opponent. It will be where we're going to elaborate a strategy based on the opponent and that we are going to face in the next competition. The operational strategy is very important since where it fails or does not exist, our weak points will be exposed and or those of our opponent will be strengthened, okay? Consequently, we must develop a strategy for that match, taking into account the opponent's weaknesses, their strengths, and trying to ensure that their strengths can be controlled by our team and trying to exploit their weaknesses. This strategy must have several phases or have different approaches depending on the possible scenarios that we find ourselves in that match. Okay, so the operational strategy mainly is a plan or a strategy that we're going to create for that certain match. Okay, and also for our own playing model. Because if we have a strategy for a playing model, but it's contradictory, okay, because of the characteristics of the players or the function organization, we will never be able to run it correctly, okay? Our team will never be able to execute it properly, okay? So this is very important, and this is a mistake that many coaches make, okay? When they develop an operational strategy for their own model or for the opponent, sometimes the characteristics of the players it's not going to be possible to execute it because they are contradictory. For example, playing with slow defenders in the back, okay, and playing with a low block, for example, and very slow forwards or a slow center forward, okay. And if you're trying to recuperate the ball near your box, and your center forward is very slow, you're not going to be able to counterattack, for example, because he's not going to be able to. That center forward is not going to be able to reach the opposition's goal very quickly, okay? Or, for example, playing with a high block with slow central defenders, okay? Because these defenders are not going to be able to run quickly back to retreat, and unconsciously, most of the times, they will start pulling the team back, and there is where you will create a lot of spaces in between the lines. So basically, we always have to take into account the operational strategy according to our play model, and of course, according to the opponent and what we're going to do, according to with the information that we get from them. Okay, I'm going to specify the two paradigms that we have, the contemporary, the paradigm from today, and the prior paradigm that we used to have before, so you understand more what we mean by the mistakes. Okay, you're going to understand them and you're going to see them more clearly. The prior paradigm, they come from reductionist theories, while the contemporary paradigm comes from emerging systemic theories of complexity. And the prior one, the game is divided in phases. Most of the phases they do not interact. Okay, coaches see them as an isolated way. Okay, while nowadays we see them as sub-phases or phases that can be distinguished but not separated. Okay, because they are part of the same process. Okay. In the prior paradigm, individual substructures of individuals are working individually. So you're going to work, for example, physically a player individually, okay? While today we see them as a functional unity of a whole, okay? Performance is measured through quantity, okay? We have to measure the performance before, many years ago, some people still do it, while today we focus more on the quality, okay, and complexity. Before, football had roles that referred to a part of the game. We have the defensive midfielders, we have the offensive midfielders. You still see this, and you still hear this, especially in a lot of journalists and people who do not study football, okay? And while today, we focus more on how to improve collectively, okay? And through groups or intersectorially, not so much individually so much. Footballer has roles that refer to part of the game, while footballer interacts to improve collectively. Nowadays, underestimation of the context we used to have before. Now, context determines its worth. Complementary is established through differences, while the complementarity is established from the similarities. The logic is unquestionable and unbreakable. Okay, so whatever the idea this coaching staff had before, you could not question this. It was untouchable. While today the logic is built through amplified to question the reality. Okay, the technical staff possess the knowledge before, and now the football and its possibilities to interact produce the model. So nowadays the knowledge is going to be built around the situation, and it will change. Rather, it will be transformed constantly. Okay, so how should we develop an operational strategy? Focus on our next opponent. First of all, gather information from our opponent if possible, okay? If you're working in performance football, you're probably going to be able to. If you're working in youth football, maybe not. So you're not going to be focused so much on operational strategy anyway. So in the event that we are in training process, we must evaluate whether it is convenient to change or modify our playing model or not. So if we're working on youth football, maybe our objective, because we're trying to teach and we're in the middle of an educational process. We're not, maybe we don't want to focus so much on changing the model. So maybe one thing or two, but we're always going to be focusing on how our team is going to play. The other one, performance football as well, but we're also going to take into account the opponent that we're going to have for that match, okay? Or simply change aspects of our model, such as the phases or moments of the game, set pieces, or aspects related to the strategy that our team is going to carry out for that match. This operational strategy must follow a logic. This logic, unbreakable logic according to Professor Frade, must be related to our model. We will see some examples of this. So this is what I meant, that when you develop an operational strategy according to your model, it has to have a certain logic, okay? You cannot try to play a certain way where the characteristics of the players do not allow you to do so, okay? It can refer to where we're going to press, what behavior we're going to take depending on the loss or recovery of the ball, how we're going to attack through long or short possessions or build up, for example, through the center or through the wings, how we're going to defend, what positioning will it have, and what balance will our team have, how many players behind the ball, for example, if we're going to, we're going to have a dynamic positioning, like, for example, we're going to always position ourselves according to where the ball is and according to where the pressure on the ball is, or we're going to do it like, for example, this, for example, is done by France in the World Cup, okay, and, for example, a more positioning in the first third or second third or last third, like, for example, Morocco, okay, where they position themselves in the mid-block, okay. In the event that our plan A does not work or changes due to various circumstances, what will our plan B will be? What our plan B will be? So, for example, we're going to establish a plan, okay, but we also have to establish an alternative, a plan B or a plan C, where after a certain thing that may happen, our plan will change. For example, if we receive a goal, or if we're winning and there's only 5 minutes left, or if we are playing with one less player, or we're playing with one more player. So all these circumstances can change our plan also, okay? What tactical system we will use and the functional organization of the team, okay? So always remember that the numbers, the 1-4-3-3, the 1-3-5-2, the 1-4-4-2, or 1-4-2-3-1, whatever, always doesn't mean anything if we are not taking into account the functional organization, which means that the characteristics of the players on each position and how they're going to interact with the information that we're going to give them, okay? And I placed a quote here from Sun Tzu, which is always very relevant to football, although it's about war and from the art of war. Strategy without tactics is the slowest path to victory. Tactics without strategy are the noise before defeat. So we always have to take into account tactics, but also the strategy. If we don't take into account the strategy, tactics is not going to work. If we only take into account strategy and we're not tactics, it's going to take us very, very long to win, maybe. Okay, so they always have to be together. Okay, we're going to give some examples of inconsistencies regarding to the playing models of the team that we're going to show. For example, here the blue team defending, they do not defend as a team collectively. The two forwards are too far and out of possession in case blue team wins the ball, and they have to organize offensively or in offensive or transition. So this problem, I remember that the national team from where I am from, Uruguay, before, with the coach before, they used to have this problem where Suarez and Cavani will be too far away from the play. They were not only they weren't working defensively, but if we stole the ball, okay, we would not be able to find them either to organize offensively the team and start opening up and building up the attack, or looking for offensive transitions, okay? So the two forward, the whole team always have to be prepared, and we have to see football or soccer as a whole. So we, like Guardiola says, when we are defending, we are preparing to attack. When we are attacking, we're preparing to defend. So always these situations, you're going to see that the examples are more or less all these different situations from the same concept. Not seeing the game, okay, as a whole, not seeing the game in different sub-phases, like the construction phase or the build-up phase and the finalization phase or finishing phase, or defending phases, or one phases from the other, like for example, one moment from the other, from passing from attack to defense or defense to attack, transitions, okay? Okay, not being able to see the game is the second example as a whole again. A whole where sub-phases and phases are distinguished but not separated. Numerical inferiority in the active zone. So let me see if I can explain this. Okay, the active zone is the zone where an imaginary line we have here, I drew it, where the forwards of the defending team is a space between the forwards of the defending team and the back line, okay? That's the active zone. The passive zone is in front of the forwards of the yellow team. So if we have too many players behind in the passive zone or behind this imaginary line, in the active zone, okay, here, okay, we're gonna have huge inferiority, numerical inferiority, okay? So if the ball gets there, okay, I'll give you an example, okay? First of all, the team is not gonna be able to progress because they're gonna be in huge numerical inferiority. So the first problem that we're gonna have is that the team is not gonna be able to progress, okay? See? Because we're gonna have, the red team is gonna have numerical inferiority and it's gonna be very big, okay? And the other problem is that if they lose the ball, okay, they're not gonna be able to press, okay? So I see this mistake a lot, and this is why teams like Morocco or Croatia have been defending very effectively, because teams have not been taking into account this situation, okay? When we are building up or constructing the game, we have to have at least close to equality, numerical equality. We cannot be outnumbered by so many players because, first of all, we are not going to be able to advance, to progress, okay? What we call in Spanish, viajar juntos. And second of all, we are not going to be able to press immediately after losing the ball because we're going to lose it, okay? So this makes teams defending like this or in a low block sometimes, the same thing, very easy, okay? And very easy to create transitional situations, okay? Argentina against Croatia had the same situations also, and especially in the first half, and second half also, but especially in the first half, okay? Not seeing the game as a whole, direct play, and later what will happen. So our footballers are too far away from each other to progress or press. So same problem with when we play direct play. This is why not many teams use it, okay? And unless certain situations appear, like for example, the match where the Dutch national team tied the game against Argentina because Argentina started retreating with a low block and not pressing, okay? Not creating pressure on the ball. So they started playing directly. In those cases, it can be, you can have success, but if the team presses and plays with not so low block, it's going to be very difficult because the player is going to be alone in numerical inferiority and separated from his teammates, and he's not going to be able, it's going to be very difficult for him to go through 4 or 5 players in very, very small spaces. Okay, even Messi can do it, but he needs space. He cannot do it in 5 or 10 meters against 3 or 4 players. It's almost impossible, okay? So, or Mbappe. So, you know, this is a situation where most of the times you're not going to succeed, okay? And this is why direct play has lost. You don't see a lot of teams playing with direct play nowadays, okay? The same problem. And the same problem as before. We are not going to be able to pressure immediately after losing the ball because there's going to be a lot of space because the midfielders are not going to have time to move forward, to run forward, okay? Okay, not seeing the game as a whole, too much distance in the build-up phase, impossible to associate or press immediately after losing the ball. This is a problem that I see a lot here in South America, especially also in the MLS, okay? Not in Europe. Teams, when they build up or construct the game from the back, they know we have to look for width. But the problem is that the teams look for width, but they move away too far away from each other. So this also creates the same problem as direct play. The players in attack in the offense organization are too isolated from each other, and they will not be able to progress again because they're going to be numerical inferiority. Okay, and even if they progress, they are not going to be able to attack the team as a whole, as a block. So we're not going to be able to press the ball if we lose it again. So this makes the situation very complicated if we do this, okay? Okay, and the last example that I placed here, I'm going to do maybe a next video about the World Cup, some observations that we have seen. And the last example is the same thing, regarding the same aspect, okay, but now different phases or moments. When we are at, like I mentioned before, a famous quote from Guardiola, when we are attacking, we're already prepared to defend. And when we are defending, we're preparing to attack. So when we are attacking, we are already preparing in case we lose the ball. This example, maybe you are able to recognize it, happened and left probably the strongest national team out of the World Cup, which was Brazil. Incredibly, 5 minutes before the end of extra time, they lose the ball, no offensive rest defense, and they grab them on a 4v4, incredible. Something that it's really amazing how at this level it can happen. On a 4v4 in extra time, and they tie the match. Of course, later there were also mistakes, like defensive mistakes, like for example, the back four line of Brazil retreating too much inside the box. There was also a fortunate play or lucky play that the Croatian player shot the ball and the defender deflected it. But mostly these situations, they cannot happen, especially on a professional level or high performance level. You know, this is really incredible how these mistakes, we can see them in top players, you know, and these are the things that make the difference in professional football. Okay, so this is it. Like I always say, I try to make short videos so we can continue talking about many different topics regarding training, methodology, and tactics. Next video, I'm going to focus on maybe the World Cup, things that we have seen. And if you have any suggestions, any questions, or any doubts, my email is always in the front slide, so you can write to me or write to me in the channel and add any suggestions or any questions, any doubts. Don't hesitate. And please don't forget to like, share, or subscribe. And I hope to see you again soon then. Take care. Bye-bye.